Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar. As always, we're just going to leave it sort of 60 seconds or so just to let everyone join us. It's always the longest 60 seconds of this webinar. We've got a lot to go through today, so I'm glad you're able to join us. It's always the longest time. Okay, so shall we start then? So as I said, thank you for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. We're discussing the survey that we ran in partnership with Immedis. So inside the industry, global payroll setup today and the future impact. I will say, Tara and I were just speaking before we joined today, and I think this is the best survey that we've run today, and the information on the survey is really fantastic. So just quickly introduce myself. My name is Melanie Pitsey. I'm the CEO of the Global Payroll Association. And Tara, over to you.
Thanks a million. So we are delighted to be involved with this survey. And just from the, I'm the CMO at Immedis. I've joined about a year ago, so I'm learning everything about global payroll. So delighted to be involved.
Thank you, Tara. And Felicia, we're lucky to have Felicia joining us today and sharing her expertise. So Felicia, over to yourself.
Great, thank you so much for that. And hi, everybody. Again, my name is Felicia Cheek, and I work for Oracle. I'm a director of product strategy with a focus on payroll. And so this is going to be very interesting today. Excited to do this, and have spent in the past a lot of time in benchmarking. So nice to see or hear everybody today.
Thanks, Felicia. Just a quick housekeeping. This will be recorded, and the recording be available after today, and also the slides. We would like it to be quite interactive, so if you have any questions, please pop the questions in the Q&A box. So just to start off with, I'm just going to pass this over to Tara as she discuss the industry insights, demographics and the focus areas.
So we got some phenomenal responses to this survey, and as Mel said, there's just incredible data in this that we're going to go through some of it, but there's even more that we're going to be make available in a white paper afterwards. So we got 62% of the people who responded are in 11 countries or more. We had 55% are in companies of 2,500 or more. The job titles and job roles were at 75% manager or higher. And really interestingly, the reporting line was very much split between finance and HR. I don't know where the other one is reporting up through, but anyway, finance and HR were the two, which we see all the time as well. So that's kind of the kind of demographics that everybody who responded, which was really, really good.
Thanks, Tara. And the focus areas. Do you want me to cover that, Tara, or do you want to?
No, I can do that. So there's kind of 4 key things we're going to talk about today. One is the global payroll operations and vendor relations, and that really talks about the number of vendors people are working with, how they work with them, that kind of thing. Number 2 is around technology, how people are investing in that technology, what they're getting out of the technology, and what's good and what's bad. Payroll information access is the 3rd point, and that's really importantly around the reporting and what payroll is able to give back to the business and how quickly they're able to give that back to the business. And then the last one is around employee experience, which is obviously hugely important, and how the employees interact with payroll, whether it's a manual task, whether it's self-healing, as we call it, and how that works and how that's going. So they're the kind of 4 focus areas we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Tara. So let's start. I will say that I keep saying surprise, so I'm going to try and not say surprise so much because, and I'll try and think of other words to say rather than surprise. But if I'm being honest with you, I think some of these results are surprising, and it would be great to hear your feedback over chat or Q&A. So just to start off with then, so this figure amazes me. It's such a huge figure. So there are over 44% of people that answered this survey were managing anywhere between 5 and 101 plus vendors. So Felicia, we've run this question before, a previous survey, and it hasn't actually changed. And I think it's huge. So I just wondered, what do you think of this figure, and why is it so high, and what could the risks be?
Yeah, so interesting. It probably has, it's still a very high number, but just can you imagine it being even higher in the past? So we are starting to see organizations work toward reducing the number of vendors that they manage. And, obviously, I think it's safe for all of us to say, and particularly if you're doing it, it is not the most effective way to run your payroll organization. However, there are lots of other variables that are involved in moving, consolidating vendors. It is an emotional move that takes time for most organizations, and I think that's what we see reflected here. But again, this is one that we definitely want to continue to follow, and I think that number will start to, even with the things that we've been through over the last year with COVID, it will start to go down a little bit quicker than it has.
So do you think there are any benefits at all, or do you think that the best way is to just reduce this number of vendors?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question, but yeah, there are definitely no benefits to managing multiple vendors. I mean, it's a lot of work, but no benefit to doing that.
Okay, thank you. So the next questions that we have, which go side by side, I believe, is, do you believe there is a single vendor who can handle all of your payroll needs globally? So we ask this question every year, and it changes. So it's quite interesting. So we've got no, 57.6%, yes, 42.4%. And how important is achieving global payroll delivery through a single vendor? So we've got here, I would say over 86% say very important, or somewhat important, and I don't think it's a surprising figure at 14% not that important. So this is a question about the single vendor is a question that's been asked every single year. So Tara, do you believe there is one truly global vendor? And do you agree with the respondents, 46%, that it's very important for a single vendor?
I absolutely agree with the 86% that it's very important or somewhat important. And I suppose I would see that there's a lot of companies, including Immedis, that actually can provide that kind of single vendor experience, right? I think the issue that a lot of people have, which we're going to get to in later questions, is that it's difficult to set that up, right? So it's hard to set it up as a single vendor because you have to do the HCM integration. Invariably, you have to, as Felicia said, have that emotional discussion where you're breaking it off with certain people who are currently doing your payroll. I also think that there's some countries that people will always want to do in-house. So there will be domestic payroll that wants to be done in-house for the US, UK, invariably, and also then, but I absolutely believe that a single vendor can do the rest of them for sure.
So we have actually had a question on this, so I think it's good to ask while we're on
Great.
this area.
Yeah.
Do you see any risk with working with just one vendor globally?
So from my perspective, I think there is a lot of benefits to working with one vendor globally, in the fact that you can get all your data in the same format, the reporting is in the same format, and is usually automatic and can be in real time. I think that the one of the things that we talk about later on is the number of errors that people have had, which is, again, shocking to use Mel's word. But I think it can only be positive, right? I think having a single vendor like that is really important from the perspective of being able to, it's one neck to ring, that basically for all of your payroll needs, you have one CSM person that you can talk to. And somebody just put in there, it's only a dream, not real. Lots of people believe that. So we do research all the time internally in Immedis to talk to prospects and customers to talk about, do they believe that there's a single vendor? And they really, a lot of the people in global payroll do not believe that there's one company that they can work with for everything.
I wanted to just add to that. I agree. And I think this is really big, and that you have to change your mindset. So when you're in a global environment, what you are expecting from the one vendor is totally different from your expectations in a local environment. And so this, to me, this question really, really shows how we are, just how good we are socializing globalization and payroll. It's a little bit different, totally different. Your expectations have to be realistic, and that gross to net calc in one place may not be realistic, but it's all the other things that you need to do in a global environment, like your reporting and analytics, your management of the vendors, your expectations, your simplification of the payroll process, because everybody's doing the same thing. That's really where you need to focus and kind of change that mindset from local to global. And there are some key differences.
And I think just one of the questions that came in there was, single vendor versus single point of failure. And I totally take your point. But I do think, because there's so many people involved, either, local offices of that vendor or, in-country partners that are working with that vendor to make it happen. I don't think there is such a thing as a single point of failure when you're talking about a global partner like that, because there's so many different people involved, even though they're all working on the same platform and up to the same timing for getting the reporting done. So I don't see that, for the customers we work with, I don't see that.
Yeah, and you don't think that way, a single point of failure with your HR system, with your finance system. Yeah. Payroll's no different. You really, that is the goal. That is definitely the goal.
We have had another interesting question coming, but we've got a lot of questions to go through, so hopefully we can get back to that. But it's a really important question about a company that previously went bust, or didn't go bust, they just stopped trading. So we'll come back to that question, because I do think it's an important one to answer. Okay, so the top 3 focus areas for improvement relating to payroll providers. So there were a lot of options, but these were the top 3: compliance, accuracy, reporting capability. So these are always the top 3, and they're all important to ensure that payroll is run correctly. Tara, why do you think this is such a challenge?
Yeah, the bit that I find amazing is I think it's always compliance and accuracy, and I think that's standard, and everybody has to be able to provide that. The reporting piece, I think, is what's really interesting. And I think one of the elements that really came out from this research is the need for global payroll to be part of very much the C-suite kind of reporting output, and the fact that the data that global payroll is able to deliver to the business, it just gives so much focus and so much knowledge across the business. It's incredible. And the bit that I suppose that's really shocking to me is, has a payroll service provider ever failed to deliver on their service? And like, there's lots and lots of research and data that says that if an employee has 2 mistakes in their payroll, they go looking for another job. That seems like a very, very high number. And I wonder if the manual piece, which we're going to talk about later, has an impact on that.
Yeah, it is. And I think what we'll do next year is drill down into that, because that's a really interesting question, isn't it? And there's going to be many different reasons, but again, it's still really high. Felicia, did you have anything to add to this at all?
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say that compliance is always it should be the top of mind. It is payroll. And I agree 100% with what Tara said about reporting. I will just add, and I know Tara said this, but I just feel like I have to say it as well. When you're really looking at the value proposition for your payroll organization, the expectation is that you can accurately calculate gross to net and in a timely manner. The real value is what you do from a reporting and analytics perspective. So you need to think about that, and you'll probably see that moving up more as, that's more of a value. The compliance and accuracy are an expectation. It's what you're supposed to do. So yeah, and I agree about the points or the fail to deliver service. I do think there are more no than yes, but it's payroll, and that number should be 0% that it has happened.
Yeah. Okay, so this is coming on to my favourite question. I don't know why. Maybe it's because this is the one that did shock me. It is my favourite question. So So we asked the audience how the percentage of those that frequently use Excel within payroll processing and data analysis. Now, I personally didn't expect it to be 71%. I know we all use Excel, and I felt that 71% is really high. And when myself and my colleague were reviewing the stats, that was the key stat that really came out, sort of shouted out at us. Felicia, am I being a bit hard? What do you think of this figure, and what does it tell us?
Yeah, so it's surprising, but not really surprising. And a lot of it is being able to, so we're talking about reporting and analytics. So it's the flexibility of your system to allow you to do reporting in the way that you need to do to make it meaningful to your organization. So a lot of times the system is not as flexible as you need it to be. And so we rely on Excel. Some of it is just the change. I think in payroll in general, we change really slow because we take very serious our responsibility to pay employees accurately and timely. And so when we know it works, we tend to stick with that, right? But a lot of it is trusting. And some of the things that you're doing in Excel, kind of looking at your process and seeing, is this something that I can do in the reporting capabilities in my system? And I think more times than none, you will find that you can do some of these reports and analytics, pulling this data in your payroll system, because payroll systems have gotten a lot more sophisticated. And again, you'll hear me say this throughout this conversation, but the real value proposition for payroll is in reporting and analytics. So that's where the focus is.
And so we've got some couple of comments actually, and it's just saying that Excel is easier, more frequently used rather than a database type of tool. So, maybe it's just one of those things that people are just so used to using, and it's easy to go to.
But I suppose my point here is that, payroll is a repeatable process, and any repeatable process has some level of automation and AI that can be, and somebody actually just brought this up in the questions, there's a level of automation and AI that can be brought into global payroll. It's complicated, absolutely, don't disagree with that. I just think it's incredibly important that if you think about the time and energy global payroll people are spending updating Excel spreadsheets, rather than it happening automatically in a platform, and they're only adding the things that are changing, whether it's bonuses or vacation days or whatever that is, I just think it's a much better use of time and effort of the global payroll team. That's kind of what I think is really important. And this is, we talk a lot about Excel being over in Immedis because we believe it's it's something that needs to be automated, because it's the thing that happens every 2 weeks or every month, which generally is the same format and the same frequency. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add just really quick to that, so when you're taking data out of your primary system, there's always a risk of data integrity. And so, to Tara's point, as much as you can use the system, because you're doing the same thing every payroll, you really want to do that.
Yeah, we have a comment in the chat. Excel, oh, where have you gone? There you go. Excel is only one additional tool, but the data has to come from the vendor. So there you go. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm glad that we've got some communication from everyone that's attending today on to keep going with the chat. Okay, so how is payroll processing managed? So this is a proper mixed bag of results really, and we've got 40% centrally. Multiple countries are centrally managed from one location. I personally thought that regionally, each region manages payroll processing for its assigned countries and territories would be slightly higher. So Tara, what does this tell us? What does this story tell us?
Yeah, and I do think this is starting to change, because I think if you look back on surveys that we've done in the past, that regionally piece has been higher. And I think what we're seeing now is that people are now starting to centrally manage it from one location. So the idea of shared services center and global shared services center are becoming much more important. So that regional number is going to go down. Localization is the locally piece is going to go down. And I think next year that number, actually the centralization piece, may actually go to, you know, over 50%, which I think would be really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think from a cost, just to add to that, from a cost perspective, the cost of managing the payroll process is a lot lower when you are in a centralized, shared service or leverage type environment. It has been proven time and time again that it is more cost effective, and you have more visibility of what's going on, you know, on that level.
Thanks, Felicia. Okay, so we asked what the top 3 activities were where payroll teams spent majority of their time each month. And it wasn't easy to say. And the top 3 answers were reconciliation, audits and controls, running payroll, and answering employee and other inquiries. So Felicia, I don't think this is an unexpected result. So what does this tell us? Does it show us that we're not automated enough within payroll, and do we need to look at adopting new technology? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of opportunity. I mean, I look at this and I see lots of opportunity for automation, because each one of these things can be automated. We should be using more RPA, or robotic process automation. We should be using more artificial intelligence. So the reconciliation, audits and controls, a lot of that can be done through artificial intelligence or AI, making it, you know, not really time consuming. And to Tara's point before with Excel, these are activities that happen every payroll. We have chatbots for answering employee and other inquiries. So for each one of these, we have digital technologies that are available, that are being used today, that can help automate. I mean, next year, I would love to see more focus on, you know, reporting and providing data for decision support across a broader organization. This has to change. This absolutely has to change. It speaks very highly to automation.
Absolutely. And I think that, as Felicia said, excuse me, the piece that's missing is, you know, giving data to the business to help in decision making. And I think that's the piece that's missing here, is that there's always going to be a piece of reconciliation, audit controls. There's always going to be a piece of talking to employees. But the majority of where I think global payroll needs to be is demonstrating to the business the you know, the data that they have in order to make different decisions.
I feel there's a trend throughout this survey about automation, robotics, AI. So we'll carry on. Okay, so I think this is an interesting question. What is your current payroll close date for all data inputs and changes? So 39% said under 6 days, and everyone else obviously was above that. And I think we've got 15 plus days, which is 11.7%. So to me, I know, Tara, we were discussing this beforehand. It feels like we haven't, in some situations, we haven't actually got real-time data. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think seeing under 6 days, given the level of manual we've seen, means that people are actually making changes to the payroll right up to payroll run date, which is interesting. It's a good employee experience, but I think it means that a lot of the work being done is on a manual basis. And there was a question then around RPA and AI. We're using RPA and AI, and Oracle are as well, around just basically standardizing the process automation and making sure that the data coming in is being, irrespective of how complex the country is being standardized in the way that data is being absorbed. And I think that that's really important. So I think the reason 39% is there is because it's still so manual that it's not being done in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some interesting
really good questions.
Yeah, in the chat. It's really, really good questions. And it's all, I think it maybe comes down to trust to a certain extent. I think somebody's sort of mentioned that. What do you think, Felicia? Do you think it comes down to trust in technology?
Well, you know what? I mean, it's 2021. We've just been through an unexpected pandemic. We need to trust technology, and we also, you know, we've got lots of remote workers. This to me is something else that speaks to automation, the lack of self-service. You know, gone should be the days of waiting until right before you need to close the payroll to get all the data and start entering it in the system. And so you know, maybe it is trust, but we need to move beyond that. And we here need to be evangelists for our organization on making that change. It's all about change, and you know, now is the time. And with all of the remote work going on, I just want to be really clear on that. The ability to work remote, we don't want payroll to be the only group in the office, because we cannot do our job, you know, without being in the office because of the time it takes. So this is something that savvy payroll leaders should all be pushing to make sure that your organization automates everywhere as much as possible, as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Felicia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question, does your organisation use a cloud-based human capital management solution? And we've got 66.7% said yes. Are these the results that you would have expected, Felicia? Or do we still have some way to go?
Well, believe it or not, you know, just having a cloud-based HCM system, I think that's pretty good. I've seen that number grow. I can't wait until we do this next year, where we have, you know, we've recovered a little bit and we've kind of stepped back and look at what we need to do, but not necessarily. Payroll is a little bit surprising, but not really, I guess I should say, because payroll tends to lag a little bit behind what we do for HR. But I think, again, those numbers are going to start to grow as well. So not necessarily surprised, but it would be interesting to see how many companies or organizations actually have a cloud-based payroll system in the process of being implemented as we speak, because I think that number is pretty high.
We ran a few years ago, we ran a session at a conference about cloud-based solution for payroll. So this must have been about 10 years ago, and we had so many complaints just saying it wasn't feasible. So we've definitely come a long way since then. And I thought, because of the pandemic, maybe that will increase more.
I think so.
Yeah,
I definitely think so. It's the agility. And, you know, the other thing is, when you start to talk to organizations looking back on where we've been, the organizations that were able to pivot really quick and have little disruption in their process were, you know, automated on cloud solutions. And as far as maintenance, and think of all of the compliance changes that we've been through all over the world, cloud-based organizations were able to adjust quickly, and other organizations not so much. So lots of experience we didn't look for and we really didn't want, but we got, and that number is going to start to grow.
Tara, has Immedis seen any change in people's thoughts on the cloud side?
Yeah, definitely. I think the cloud, I think everybody accepts the fact that the cloud is the future. And they may not be there, but as Felicity said, there's a lot of people who are in the process of implementing that right now. I think the bit that makes me very sad is the integration piece, right? So the idea that you have HCM and payroll software that are not speaking to each other seamlessly is not good, because the whole idea with having a cloud-based payroll solution is that it will talk seamlessly. If you do have a HCM solution, it talks seamlessly, so you're not looking at manually inputting files or manually, you know, uploading or downloading information from to the payroll piece or back into the HCM solution. So I think that's one of the pieces that I see there's a lot more people demanding that seamless integration, so that when I buy a cloud-based payroll solution, global payroll solution, you have to have that integration with Oracle, obviously, but also the other tier one HCM solutions. And even if it's not tier one, there has to be a way to get that data in and out. So whether you're building a bespoke solution like we've done to Oracle, or even just using just the standard kind of integration tools, I just think that's incredibly important. And the idea that there would be no integration when you're using a cloud, based payroll software and a HCM solution just seems catastrophic, to be honest with you.
One of the issues that we've come across is that when people have implemented a HCM system, they've forgotten about payroll. So we have had a situation where
Absolutely.
somebody joined our membership because they didn't have a payroll background, but because they'd implemented the HCM software or system, they openly said, well, we forgot about payroll, so now my job is to get payroll sorted. So Felicia, do you feel like that might be another reason?
Yeah, it is actually, because payroll's a little bit, it's a different puzzle. HR, you're making that decision across the globe, right? But payroll it depends on the demographics of the organization, and it's a puzzle, and quite frankly, it's a fun puzzle. And so a lot of times, and again, that's where you step up as savvy payroll leaders to talk about it and talk about what you suggest, because you have to know, what companies are out there, like companies like Immedis that can process your payroll in countries across the globe. You definitely need to know that and provide that input. So if you hear of a decision on an HCM, a decision being made, even if you do nothing with payroll, you should be concerned and involved, because the integration is going to impact you. The data that you receive and that you need to process payroll is important, even if you do absolutely nothing with your payroll system. And the reason that you need to push to be part of those conversations early, not when the decision has been made.
Yeah. Okay, another conversation that we had about this particular one, the top 3 barriers to new technology adoption. So when we've previously run this survey, cost wasn't the highest. So again, I was, what's a different word to surprised? Not shocked, but I was perplexed that cost was back up there as number 1. Legacy systems, integration, capability, and staffing. So Tara, what's your thoughts on this?
And I think this is up to providers in a lot of ways to provide a better solution for making the business case for this, because every time we've done this for a customer, you eventually come out to, you need less staff and the costs are better for processing global payroll. But what I think we're not doing sometimes is we're not giving people a really good sense of what the opportunity cost is, which I think is really important, but also building that business case to go to management to get the cost to actually do the implementation, and also look at the kind of HCM piece as well. I think that's probably on us, but I think the cost and the staffing are both very similar. And I think absolutely the legacy system integration is important, because if you have a really legacy HCM solution, there may be difficulties in integration. But I think that's down to us being kind of providers of global payroll, figuring out how to make that business case with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the cost is more than the cost of the system. Like Tara said, if you're just looking at the cost of the system, you're looking in the wrong place. And so you need to be looking at the risk, and you need to be looking from a staffing perspective. Even you need to be looking at what you're doing today versus what you would be doing in a cloud environment. And what you will probably find with the upgrades and the number of people that you need to maintain that system, it's going to be totally different. Your numbers are going to be different. So I'll say again, I agree with Tara. It's really just taking the time and having the expertise to build that business case.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the next set of figures. So payroll was thrown into the spotlight, basically, wasn't it? 18 months now.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that the reports were so important for businesses to be able to run. CEOs or C-suite needed to know what salary costs would be, what they can do. The question here is, how do you currently access payroll reports and analytics? So you've got 31%. We didn't, massage these figures. They're all 31% real-time dashboard and access to relevant reports. Service provider delivers as part of the service, manual consolidation of reports from multiple systems. And then on the flip side, we've got how long does it typically take to produce a global payroll related report? So we've got 19% said more than a week, 41% more than a day, and then obviously it goes lower, 12 to 4 to 8 hours, 1 to 3 hours. So Felicia, what do you think of these figures? Is it down to the payroll providers, or does the payroll industry need to shout out a little bit more to get these figures down?
So I think it may be a mix of both, but it's really the ability to do consolidated reporting. I like the 16% with instant access. So real-time reporting capabilities. And earlier we had someone asking about, one system. Is it really feasible? Is it a good idea? Here's where you benefit from having that one system. And again, it's not necessarily focusing on the gross to net, but the consolidation, where is all of that information going, and how quickly can you get to that information to do global reporting? This really speaks to a lot of what we use Excel for, to consolidate data from various different systems. So it's, and I think most payroll vendors recognize that. As payroll professionals, we need to do a better job of really explaining the importance of those features and looking for that in a vendor. And not saying that you're not doing a good job, but we can do a little bit better. That should be a very high expectation and requirement from any vendor, that you can do consolidated reporting in one place.
And Tara, so I would assume from Immedis' perspective, reporting is a key aspect of your delivery. What's your thoughts? Is it, do you think, people struggle because payroll's so complex?
I think it's complex, but I think that's secondary. I think the main reason is that it's difficult for people is that they're getting 17 different types of reports, and they're having to consolidate those they're in different currencies. Invariably, they don't have the ability to kind of look at it from one currency. So I think the country complexity is one thing, but I actually think the fact that you're getting 17 different types of reports is the challenge here. And I think one of the things you talked about earlier was around data, and I think it's really interesting. We were talking to a company recently that is setting up a payroll office, and in that payroll office they're going to have they want all the country complexity within the platform. They don't want one person to kind of own that country complexity as a kind of a global payroll person, because they don't believe one person can have 130 country complexities in their head. So what they're actually hiring is they're hiring a lot of data people. And this is where I think global payroll is going in the future, is that there's going to be incredible amounts of data created from the work everybody's doing. And if you think about it, that it's 70% of the cost of the business is coming from global payroll in a lot of cases, and yet it's going to take 19% of the people who responded, it's going to take 1 week or more to produce those reports. It is insane, right? And if you think about the decisions that were being made in days during COVID about what to shut down, where to increase budget, where to increase employees, that is just, I don't think that's no longer acceptable for people, that it's going to take. I understand why it takes a week or more, but I just don't think it's for the business. I think global payroll needs to step up more to do that.
So somebody's actually put on here that payroll providers offer a limited amount of reports. If you want something more advanced or non-standard, you get charged. So I suppose, is it trying to agree what you need before
upfront? I think absolutely. Yeah, there's kind of 10 standard reports we give out. If you want anything more than that, that's negotiated as part of the when you come onto the Immedis platform. And I just think that's something you should be pushing us for in that situation.
And actually, we find from the complexity side of things, like compliance, some people assume that the vendor will inform them of changes on legislation, and if it's not in the contract, you're not going to know, which I think some people find that surprising also.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is not surprising. I found this one a bit depressing. So we go for a different sort of way on this one. Is global payroll data reporting currently requested and incorporated into company functional strategy and future planning? So often we have the technology in place to support these requests, 23.2%. We've got 28.6%. Often data consolidation is a struggle, sometimes and never. So I feel like they're all pretty flat, pretty low. Yeah. Tara, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think given that, as I said, 70% of the cost, between 60 and 70% in most companies, is coming through people costs, and the idea that it is not being used every single day by the business to make decisions and go into, future planning is insane, right? I really do. I think it's that only 23% of respondents are being used that way. And I think that's an issue with the business, right? The business is not saying to the global payroll department that we need this, and what do you need to make this happen, right? I just think it's ridiculous that we don't have access to information that would support that as 10%.
Felicia, we ran a session a couple of weeks back about increasing the profile of the payroll profession and shouting out loud. Is this one of those situations where this figure is so low that we need to start promoting the payroll department within organizations?
Yeah, I mean, the power of payroll is reporting, and it's all of the data that we have, and the way that we give that data back is in a format that's meaningful to your organization. And letting them know that you have this, letting them know that you have this kind of information, this kind of insight, because I said before, payroll, generally, we sit in a good place to know what's going on across the entire organization, because we just know how the business works, because we have to pay according to the way the business works. But just being able to share that throughout the organization, a lot of times they don't know, your organization doesn't know what data you have and that you can share. So making it known. And I will also add that from a technology perspective, this is one of the things that we have to focus more on, just putting, giving you the capability to put more power into the data. So again, as I said earlier, this is our value proposition. And these numbers need to really change, over the next couple of years.
Maybe we need to put a target on, where we want these figures to be.
Right.
I also think it's an opportunity for global payroll. Like, we talk a lot about global payroll getting to the top table. I just think that, being able to provide this data to the business at a time like now, when hybrid is the norm, and a lot of companies are asking people to come back into the office, so therefore I can work on a boat in France if I want to. I just think it's extraordinary that this is such an opportunity for payroll to become so strategic in the organization, as Felicity said, through the data and through the reporting. It's just so it's such an opportunity for us, I think, from that perspective.
It's like we've got to step up, isn't it? So one thing that's come out of the pandemic, can I say positively, is that the payroll profile has increased, and it's like, let's not make sure that it gets sucked under again, that profile not only stays where it is, but actually increases. Let's use this momentum now. Okay, so this is to both of you. Employee self-service. How do employees currently update their payroll related information? So 51% self-service capability, 24.9% contact a member of HR payroll, 14% said other, and 8.8% is dedicated mailbox. I'm not sure what the other would be. And then following your organisation's payday, do employers have a need to contact payroll and HR with payroll related issues and accuracies? So yes, but low volume of queries. It's 41%, 36% is sometime, and yes, multiple employees each month. So does this go back to AI or RPA and automation and, you know?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Go ahead, Felicia.
No, I was just going to say, definitely, I am really happy with the self-service number. So it's something that actually should have been this way years ago. It kind of took off slow, but it's very natural as the work environment starts to switch. I'm feeling like maybe we could talk to the 8.8 that have a dedicated mailbox, because that is, you just don't, that you want to change that. And the other thing I will say about payroll inquiries after the payroll, as Tara mentioned previously, payroll is a repetitive process. And so for you to have, after the payroll, lots of inquiries, you should be able to see what those are. This is, just what are the trends, what kinds of questions, and automate. This is where you can use a chatbot for that, those inquiries, and not use your resources in that way.
And I think for both, employees are happier when they don't have to, when they can do this self-service themselves. And I think if you think about the not 51.7%, the data they're giving, like bank details or, information about a home address is changing or something like that, that is really secure data that needs to be not sitting around or sitting in an unsecured email, or I just think it's so dangerous to have that data out there that can be seen or used incorrectly. I just think that's really important. And I think if you're thinking about from an employee experience perspective, people want to be able to, if it's a really difficult issue, obviously they want to speak to a person. But if it's just generic queries, I just think they want to be able to get that, as Felicia said, from a bot or from from their payslip, for example.
Felicia, we've got a question actually for you that's come up in chat. It says, why would you want to change the 8.8% with a dedicated mailbox for payroll queries?
Well, I would like to see actually payroll, the payroll resources working on those more value added activities. Not the, so this is a dedicated mailbox for employee self-service. That's something that the data integrity is so much better when the employee enters the data, and you can use the system to automate, any formats or just your policies. But really, that's not, I think that the payroll resource can be better utilized in more value-added areas that create or help build the value proposition for the organization. I do understand what you're saying, though. That's kind of a white glove approach, but is it really where you want your resources to spend time?
And with this running theme that we've got about RPA and automation and everything else, somebody's put on the chat here, where can employers witness AI or RPA? This is what puzzles many employers, not knowing what this is exactly. So Felicia and I was lucky enough to go to the States with Felicia, and we ran a little tour of meetings, didn't we? And at one of the meetings, I don't know if you remember, that somebody thought RPA was actually a robot, so not necessarily automation. And I feel like we haven't spoken about RPA automation so much in the last 4 years. We are now more so. Do you think that it's part of the GPA's job to educate people what RPA is and automation?
Yeah, I definitely, my answer to that was going to be, so Mel, you need to do an education, digital technologies, AI, RPA, just what does that mean? And specifically, what does it mean in payroll? How does it benefit payroll? So there you go, Mel.
Well, we're not that this was a planned question, but at the end of September, we hope that both of you will come back on board, because we're actually going to be running a virtual summit on technology to hopefully answer some of these questions. Because one of the key things that came out of this survey was, why are people not going on to automation and RPA? We will be sending out a anonymous survey to people just to try and find out why people are a bit hesitant to answer, to actually go into this technology. So obviously here we've got people don't necessarily know what it means or what it does. So that's a step in the direction that we actually need to go to. So we're coming up to our final one here, and then we will come on to some more questions. Are payroll teams and data currently used to support any of the following initiatives when asked to select all that apply? So obviously we've got a lot of results here. What does this tell you guys? Is this again all about automation and everything? Does this follow the theme? Is this the last question that actually ties up? We need to be looking at RPA and automation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would imagine payroll should be involved in all of these things, right? So, we've seen a massive remote work or hybrid work supporting. We've seen financial well-being being part of the employer's requirement now, that you're demonstrating to employees what they should be doing from a pension perspective, or what they could be doing, from financial well-being side. The diversity and inclusion piece is, payroll is where people get that information about what pay equity is for, that's obviously legal in the UK. It's becoming law in a lot of other countries now, like Spain and California and things like that. I just don't think you can be doing these things in an organization without speaking to the payroll professionals in that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And, these are great ways to show the value of the payroll organization. Again, outside of processing paychecks, right? This is really where we see the value. And I'm really passionate about a couple of these. Employee financial well-being is one of them. And the shift has been, we've always focused on pensions and retirement, but the shift has been the here and now. What do you need today? And this is really where payroll plays a huge role in, education on understanding what's being withheld from my paycheck, how I may be able to access my wages early. I know that is a topic, but hey, we need to talk about it also. I don't want you to be closed to that. But those are all things that payroll plays a big role in, and we need to step up on that. The other thing, diversity and inclusion, gender pay equity. One of the things that I will say is if you are struggling with how do I go to my organization, how do I go to my leadership and tell them the power or show them the power of the data, you may be able, or you should be able, to run some types of reports that can help give this information on a department by department basis, or whatever you think is beneficial. This is insight and information that we have that we can share. So that is a great opportunity to get started on just what you can pull and share in your organization, and obviously improving the employee experience. So I get to be an employee too, right? And at the end of the day, if I don't get paid correctly, then nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And so, yeah, definitely the employee experience is definitely a payroll plays a big role in that.
And at the moment where you've so many people who haven't been in the office for a year and a half, their pay slip is the one email they're going to open from the organization, exactly. Right? So that pay slip, there's such opportunity in that pay slip, in that communication, for the organization to give them information or tell them about opportunities that there are in the organization, or whatever that is. And I just think that's why payroll to me is just such a profoundly important element of the overall future of organizations.
Yeah. Can I just add one other thing I forgot to say? Facilitation of remote working. So payroll is, compliance. We're all about compliance. And sometimes organizations, and well, I shouldn't say that, because most organizations are thinking about, the impact of remote workers. And here's where we come in and we show how we know the laws and what impact it may have on our organization. And I know in lots of organizations, people are working totally different places. I mean, I wish I were on a remote island, actually. But it's an opportunity for payroll to say, hey, may want to look at this because their work location is actually different, and this may have some impact on our organization down the road. So, at the end of the day, we are responsible for using every opportunity to show value and add value to the organization. And here are, some excellent opportunities to do that.
Yeah, it's fantastic opportunities. So there's so much more data, isn't there, Tara, from this survey? As I mentioned, we will be running another sort of global summit where we will be tackling more on the technology side, as there's some positive stuff and there's also some, disappointing facts and figures, but we can talk about those, and I think it's really important to talk about it because it helps the payroll industry. So just so that we've got some time for a couple of questions. One question we have here is, what data is it that you think organisations want to see from payroll? So I think that's a really good question. Felicia, should I chuck that over to you first?
So I'm going to go back to what we just said. So it all should be information and insight for the organization, information that the organization can use to make, decisions. And we just gave you 4 or 5 really good examples. So I'll just reiterate, think from that perspective. Diversity and inclusion, financial well-being, remote workers, employee experience, and then look to what else is specific to your organization. So you got to be creative, but again, this is where you look at those people in your organization that think outside of the box and can help add value in that way.
So we had a question previously about what if a company stops trading. That happened a good few years ago. Maybe, was it about 10 years ago now?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily see that happening, but what's your thoughts? Do you think that's something that people need to be aware of?
Well, I think, Tara, should I let you answer that question? I'll just say really quick, it's in vetting the vendor. I mean,
absolutely.
that was a while ago. I think things have gotten a lot stricter. We're vetting a lot better. I'm going to turn it over to Tara, but.
Yeah, and I think, any RPIs or RPAs we do, or FPs or anything like that, there's a lot of financial information in them to make sure that you're finding out what our balance sheet looks like and that sort of stuff. And I think you have to make sure that that the person that you're dealing with has that kind of financial backing that you're going to need. I think that's really important.
And I think at the time when that did happen, there was a small amount of global payroll providers. You got a little bit more choice. It was a new industry.
Yeah.
So and guys, a lot of payroll providers have financial security because they're getting good funding. So I would be surprised if something like that happened in the future. But as you say, it's like getting to know your vendor, isn't it?
And I think the market at the moment is, that from my side of it as a vendor, it's really hot right now. Gartner reckons it's going to be 10 billion by 2022 is going to be spent on multi-country payroll outsourcing, which is what they call global payroll. It's blowing up at the moment. People are being asked, what level of automation that there is and what level of consolidation on global payroll in large companies. And if you look at the people who answer this questionnaire and the survey, it's, a lot of the people who were on it were north of 2,500 people. And I think that's going to be really important going forward. There's going to be a lot of people are going to recognize it's a bit like the HR consolidation where there was the HCM kind of revolution happened. It's going to be the same thing for global payroll and payroll.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that, obviously we've covered a lot in this hour, is there anything that you think that we've missed that is important to mention, or you
Mel, a couple of people have asked about the slides. You're obviously going to make the slides available, right?
Yeah, the slides will be available. They'll also be on the website with the recording. So just give us a few hours just to get all of that set up, and we'll send a message out to everyone just to let you know that it's available to download. I would really like to say thank you for your participation as an audience. I think it's been fantastic. This makes it more enjoyable when we have a webinar where people get involved. And just want to say thank you so much, Tara and Felicia, for joining us today. It's been a fantastic webinar, and being an absolute geek, I love talking about all of this because I think it's really important and really interesting.
Yeah, me too. Total data geek. Me too.
Yeah, I was gonna say so. So you have the geek squad here, right?
Totally, absolutely, yeah.
So next time, maybe when you see us, we won't have like our business wear on. We might have t-shirts, geek squad on. So you'll have to forgive us if we turn up with that.
Our payroll geek squad.
Payroll
exactly.
Yeah, we'll do that. So if there's any, we've had so many questions come through. So if there's anything that we've missed, I will check through and then we'll come back to you. I hope you can join us in our future summit or webinar just to see what the technology answers are. I know obviously we discussed quite a lot. If you have any questions, please contact Tara and Felicia or myself. So thanks again.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.